6. Investigations. Ace was being chased down endless metal corridors by a huge black swastika-wearing Dalek. Its sucker arm was thrust stiffly upwards, and it was chanting, "Hail, Doctor! Hail, Doctor!" in a harsh metallic voice. She wanted to stop and protest that this was all wrong, but she knew that the Dalek would kill her before she could explain properly. Another Dalek appeared, carrying a breakfast tray. Ace could smell coffee and bacon. But could she trust Dalek catering? With profound relief, Ace woke up and immediately started worrying again. She was in a silk nightdress, sleeping between fine linen sheets. She opened her eyes and saw a hotel bedroom decorated in a style of luxury to which she'd never been accustomed. Had she drifted from one dream to another? No, the room and the bed were real enough. So was the smell of coffee and bacon. So was the brisk rap on the door, and the doctor's voice. "Come on, Ace, rise and shine. Most of the toast's gone already." After a hasty wash, Ace scrambled into her clothes and emerged to find the doctor spick and span and apparently rested, finishing off his share of a hearty breakfast. Despite his threat, there was plenty of toast left. Plenty of everything, really. Coffee, bacon, eggs, and some rice and fish stuff the doctor called kedgeree. Ace piled her plate high and tucked in. "Do you well here, don't they?" "It's the Free Corps HQ," said the doctor. "The loyal supporters of the Reich deserve the best." Ace looked out at the view of London, grey buildings beyond a grey river. "What about them out there? The ordinary people?" "I'm sure they're provided with a nourishing diet adequate to their needs," said the doctor straight-faced. Ace remembered the thin tea and sawdust buns at the coffee stall. She opened her mouth to argue, but the doctor pointed upwards and put a finger to his ears and then to his lips. "Yes, I'm sure they are," she said, and went on munching, though with less enjoyment than before. "We need to keep our strength up, Ace," said the doctor gently. "We've got an important job to do." "I'm looking forward to it," said Ace. Let the unseen listeners make what they liked out of that. Overnight, an assortment of garments had appeared, laid out on chairs in the little hallway of the suite. The doctor wandered over to them and started trying things on. As Ace finished her third cup of coffee, he called, "Ace, what do you think?" She turned. The doctor was wearing a long black leather overcoat and a black soft hat. "Well, how do I look?" Ace studied him for a moment. "Ghastly!" "Really?" said the doctor, pleased. "You're not just saying that. Needs a final touch, I think." Fishing in his bottomless pockets, he produced a monocle on a black ribbon and screwed it into his left eye. "There, how about that?" "Terrific," said Ace. "Real Gestapo chic." At 9 o'clock exactly, there was a knock on the door. "Come and see," barked the doctor. The door opened, and Lieutenant Hemmings marched in and snapped to attention, giving the Nazi salute. "Hail Hitler!" The doctor touched a casual hand to the brim of his soft black hat. "Well done, Lieutenant. You have transport available?" "There is a car and driver outside, Herr Doctor. They are at your service, as I am myself." Hemmings was immaculate, in neatly pressed black uniform, badges and buttons gleaming, jackboots polished till you could see your face in them. No doubt about it, thought Ace. He was tall, dark, amazingly handsome, and he gave her the creeps. The doctor was nodding approvingly. "Sehr gut. Your military records section, your archives, where are they situated?" "At the Reich Museum in Bloomsbury, Herr Doctor, formerly the British Museum." "We shall go there at once." "It'll not yet be open, Herr Doctor." "Then you will make arrangements to open it," said the doctor. "At once, Herr Doctor. With your permission?" Hemmings hurried over to the telephone and rapped out a series of orders. He slammed down the phone. "The caretaker lives nearby, and a messenger is on the way to his house. He will be waiting at the museum by the time you arrive." "Satisfactory," said the doctor. "There now remains the matter of my assistant." Hemmings looked at Ace. "This young lady, Herr Doctor?" "Just so. No doubt you have been wondering why I found it necessary to bring her with me." Hemmings looked at Ace in a way that made her want to hit him. "It is not for me to speculate, Herr Doctor, and with such a charming young lady." The doctor raised his eyebrows, causing his monocle to drop out. He stuck it back in again. "My dear fellow, you surely didn't think—" "I must confess, Herr Doctor." The doctor laughed. No. The girl is not unattractive, but for myself, I like them big, blonde and bouncy, Rubenesque, Wagnerian even." "Quite so, Herr Doctor." Terrific, thought Ace bitterly. It was bad enough being taken for the doctor's bimbo. Now I'm not even up to bimbo standard. It wasn't hard to shoot the doctor a glance of pure hatred, which was what the part needed anyway. "No, the young lady is here for quite another purpose," the doctor went on. "Her father was a leading light in the British resistance in the early days. He is now undergoing re-education in Sachsenhausen concentration camp. The girl's mother was killed at the beginning of the war, and as a child she travelled extensively with her father. She has excellent knowledge of his contacts and associates. She can be invaluable to us in rooting out the last remnants of these criminals." Ace realised that Hemmings was looking at her in an entirely new way, rather like a tiger surveying a nice plump deer. She was his potential victim now, his meat, and her skin crawled as his eyes moved over her. She started having doubts about the doctor's plan. He was about to put her in Lieutenant Hemmings' power, with instructions not to harm her, of course. But could the tiger be trusted once it was alone with the deer? "I see," said Hemmings slowly. "Most interesting. She is willing to cooperate?" The doctor smiled coldly. "Her father is an old man, and the re-education course is rigorous. She is well aware that his survival, let alone his eventual release, depends on her cooperation." "A classic technique, Herr Doctor. Allow me to congratulate you." The doctor shrugged modestly. "I think the best plan is for me to go directly to the Reich Museum alone, while I leave you here to deal with her." Hemmings looked puzzled. "I'm sorry, Herr Doctor? I'm not clear what you want me to do." "Do?" said the doctor in mock surprise. "My dear Lieutenant, she is a traitor suspected of links to the resistance. I want you to arrest and interrogate her." When the messenger from his local Free Corps HQ pounded on his door, the caretaker prepared for the end. He had committed only the smallest of sins against the Reich: aid to an escaping Jewish artist, selling a few bits of ancient jewellery. But even minor crimes meant deportation or death. Old and frail as he was, the caretaker didn't want to die. It wasn't so much death he feared as leaving what was left of his beloved museum. In the days when the Reich Museum had been called the British Museum, he had been a professor and a senior curator. Now the museum was closed, he was a humble caretaker, but he was there every day. Now it was all over. He dressed hurriedly, not wanting to be dragged away in his nightshirt, and stumbled downstairs, a tall, thin old man with wispy white hair. He opened the door and found himself facing the usual Free Corps thug. This one was mounted on a huge motorcycle, which had ridden right up to the front door. "I am ready," said the caretaker with as much dignity as he could muster. He wished his knees would stop trembling. The Free Corps messenger stared at him. "You don't even know what I've come for yet, you old fool." "But surely—" The caretaker made himself shut up. "I am ready for whatever you want me to do." "You'd better be. Some bigwig from Free Corps HQ wants to consult the military archives. You're to meet him at the museum right away and open up for him. Heaven help you if you keep him waiting." The messenger roared away. Breathing a silent prayer of thanks, the caretaker fetched his keys and wheeled his ancient bicycle out of the hallway. As he pedalled frantically through the deserted streets of ruined Bloomsbury, the caretaker told himself he still wasn't out of trouble. If the visitor got there before him, high officials of the Reich weren't accustomed to being kept waiting, and a complaint from an irate VIP would be enough to finish him. As he turned into Museum Road, he saw a black limousine parked outside the museum. Frantically he pedalled up to it and dismounted, panting, leaning his bicycle against a pillar. Immediately the limousine's chauffeur, another Freikorps thug, jumped from the car and started screaming at him. "You are late, you stupid old swine! It'll be reported. The Herr Doctor has been kept waiting. Is this the respect you show a high official of the Reich?" He raised his fist, and the caretaker flinched, awaiting the inevitable blow. "One moment," said a voice behind them. A small, dark man in a leather coat and soft black hat was getting out of the car. He transfixed the chauffeur with a stare from his cold grey eyes. "You!" The thug came to attention. "Herr Doctor? Did I request you to speak?" "No, Herr Doctor, but then do not speak. Get back in the car and wait till I return." "Very good, Herr Doctor. May I ask how long?" "You may not. But if you are not here waiting at my attention when I return, it is I who will make the report." "Very good, Herr Doctor." The chauffeur jumped back into the car and sat to attention behind the wheel, staring straight ahead. The man called the doctor came over and touched the trembling caretaker on the arm. "There is no problem," he said gently. "We arrived virtually together, and there will be no complaint. Shall we go inside?" Producing a huge bunch of keys, the old man opened the doors. His hands were trembling so much he had difficulty in getting the key in the lock. "You are very kind, Herr Doctor. I should not like to lose my privilege of working at the museum, even though it is closed." He wheeled his bicycle inside the foyer and closed and locked the door. "If you will follow me, Doctor. The military archives are in the rear of the building. We must go through the galleries." He led the doctor up the stairs and through the first gallery. The caretaker saw that the visitor was staring around him in evident amazement. The enormous gallery, and all the subsequent galleries, were almost empty. Where there had once been paintings, statues, tapestries, there was nothing. Bare walls, empty pedestals, and a huge echoing silence in which their footsteps rang hollowly. "I understand why the museum is no longer open to the public," said the visitor dryly. "I'm afraid there would be little for them to see. The bulk of the exhibits are now in Berlin. Marshal Goering himself supervised their removal." The visitor nodded. "Yes, he was always a keen collector." The caretaker wondered at his evident surprise. Naturally the museum had been looted. The National Gallery and all the other museums and art galleries had been emptied as well, their art treasures taken for the Adolf Hitler Museum in New Berlin. He led his visitor to a section of dusty offices behind the scenes. When the museum records were taken to Berlin, the Military Archives Bureau took over this area for a while. The bureau is closed now, but the records are still waiting to be transferred. If I might ask which period? From the beginning of the war until now. This room... Here, then, I think." He took the visitor to a long, dusty room lined with filing cabinets. "The records are in order, beginning with this cabinet here. If there is anything else I can do?" "Thank you, no. You have been very kind." The caretaker shuffled away. A strange little man, he thought, and certainly the politest Nazi I've ever met. Almost too good to be true. Left alone, the doctor went to a filing cabinet, took out a file and opened it. It was full of maps and military reports. He began to read. The first part of the story followed the familiar course. It began in 1939. After a long series of largely unopposed smash-and-grab raids on the Rhineland, Austria and Czechoslovakia, referred to by the Nazi historian as the Führer's inspired and glorious consolidation of the legitimate claims of the Reich, Adolf Hitler had invaded Poland, a country whose safety Britain had rather rashly guaranteed. To the historian's evident regret, the British had finally dug in their heels, honoured their obligation, and ordered Hitler to leave. He was to withdraw his troops, or they would declare war. Hitler was quite sure the British would never go to war over Poland, but he was wrong. In September 1939 the war began. With astonishing speed, Hitler's army swept across Europe in the Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War, and the British and French were driven back. So far, so familiar, thought the Doctor. History as he knew it, as it ought to be. But somewhere along the line things had changed. The question was where and how, and why. He opened another file. Hemmings and Ace were in an interrogation room. It was another concrete-walled cellar with a table in the centre and a high-powered light bulb dangling from the ceiling. The table was bolted to the floor, and there were curious dark-stained grooves in it. There was a hook in the ceiling, and a bathtub and sink in one corner. They were sitting either side of the table on hard wooden chairs. Hemmings was smoking a cigarette and toying with a riding crop. Talk about corny, thought Ace. The sinister room and the black uniformed man with the whip. She'd seen it in 100 old movies, but she was uneasy all the same. What was it the Doctor had once said? Never despise clichés, Ace. The only reason they became clichés is because they really work. Suddenly Ace realised that she was afraid. Take the initiative, she thought. Chuck your weight about, like the Doctor. How much longer must I wait? She said aloud. Hemmings slammed the whip down on the table. I shall decide that. You heard the Herr Doctor's orders, said Ace defiantly. I was to be arrested, held for a while as if being interrogated, and then released with other prisoners so that I could make contact with the Resistance. Hemmings smiled. As if being interrogated, he said gently. But how much of an as if, that's the question. He spoke in a soft, dreamy whisper as if in a trance. Maybe I should give you the full treatment. I could start by having you flogged. Oh, it would all be according to the book. A set number of strokes and a doctor present in case of accidents. There are even official forms to fill in. He nodded towards the bath in the corner. The water treatment is usually very successful. Head held under until the lungs are bursting, pulled out, and shoved under again. He pointed to the hook in the ceiling. Or there's the merry-go-round. Hands tied behind you, hung up by the wrists, and spun gently to and fro. The effects of that can be a bit permanent, I'm afraid. Somehow people never quite straighten out. He drew hard on his cigarette and regarded the glowing tip. Even the simple cigarette, properly applied... He's a nutter, thought Ace, a genuine sicko, and I'm completely in his power. With a mighty effort she stopped her voice from trembling. Listen to me, you sadistic creep. This is all a pretence. I am not, repeat, not a real prisoner. You heard the Herr Doctor's orders. If you disobey them or exceed them in any way, you will be very, very sorry. Hemmings drew a deep, shuddering breath. Yes, of course. Such a pity. Another time, perhaps. That's more like it, said Ace. I can see you're in love with your work, but don't get carried away. He leaned forwards across the table, eyes glittering. But I don't think we can have you coming out of an interrogation completely unmarked. It really wouldn't be at all convincing, you know. Hemmings smashed the back of his hand across Ace's face, knocking her out of her chair.